But you know, Rev, there was one man who had a lot to say about police brutality, and that was a man whose birthday we celebrating today, the one and only Malcolm X. This is what he had to say.
In order for you and me to devise some kind of method or strategy to offset some of the events or repetition of the events that have taken place here in Los Angeles recently, we have to go to the root. We have to go to the cause. Dealing with the condition itself is not enough. And it is because of our effort toward getting straight to the root that people oftentimes think we're dealing in hate. We are oppressed. We are exploited. We are downtrodden. We are denied not only civil rights, but even human rights. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you? And I, for one, as a Muslim, believe that the white man is intelligent enough. If he were made to realize how black people really feel and how fed up we are without that old compromise and sweet talk. Stop sweet talking him. Tell him how you feel. Tell him what kind of hell you've been catching, and let him know that if he's not ready to clean his house up, if he's not ready to clean his house up, he shouldn't have a house. It should catch on fire and burn down.
That was the one and only Malcolm X. This week of the 19th, so 2 days ago, was actually what would have been his 96th birthday. Right, and it's amazing to me whenever with the thing that always gets me whenever Martin Luther King and Malcolm X have birthdays. I always think these dudes could still be alive. That's the thing that always gets me, especially Martin Luther King. He was born the same year as my grandmother, and my grandmother's still very much kicking and working. She still works, you know. So like, but with Malcolm X, this was a man who was so much of what we think of him as is he wasn't a finished product yet. He was sort of incomplete. And that's really, I think, a big difference between him and Martin Luther King as well. When we always contrast and compare the two, because they were the two biggest leaders of their era. You know, Martin Luther King he evolved as well, but he was kind of perfecting what he did, whereas Malcolm was growing exponentially after he left the Nation of Islam. He was reaching out to other black groups within the community and civil rights organizations. One of my favorite parts of his book that Bill Kay brought up, the Autobiography of Malcolm X, that was co-written with Alex Haley. He talked about how when he went to a college university, there was a white girl who came up to him and asked him what she could do, to help black people in America. And he just blew her off and was kind of like nothing, like, you know, he kind of dissed her, and he said that he regretted that. And he regretted a lot of the more black separatist ideology that he pushed with the Nation of Islam, and rounded into a much more populist figure, a figure who understood the exploitative system of capitalism, of corporatism, of rich and poor, who understood racism on a much more global scale outside of just African Americans and white and black here in this country. And so he was evolving, and that's always the thing that I always think about when I think of Malcolm X. Rev, when you think about Malcolm X, what is the thing that most comes to your mind when you start thinking about him and his life and legacy?
To be honest, it's two things: the book and the movie.
Right.
Because he died in '65.
Right.
I was only 4 years old at the time, and I didn't really get exposed to Nation of Islam stuff until later. As a matter of fact, I remember it was well after Malcolm El Shabazz had died that I began reading some of the writings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so I knew of him as this figure who was more polarizing, seemingly, in comparison to Martin Luther King. And I can only say that because everybody on Martin Luther King's birthday, spoke all these wonderful things and all these nice speeches and everything. And Malcolm X's birthday would kind of pass. Mm-hmm. I mean, even today, look, we talk about how Katie Hall worked to get Martin Luther King's birthday to be a holiday. Well, nobody's working to make Malcolm X's birthday a holiday. But I also remember reading the autobiography. It was an awesome read.
It was.
First of all,
yes,
for a kid to be reading. And then when I think of the movie, with Denzel Washington, and it fit the book, and he fit the character. I mean, sometimes I'm not sure when I think of my picture in my head of Malcolm X, I'm not sure whether I'm thinking of Malcolm
or Denzel.
I mean, if he got an Oscar for one role, it should have been that one, not Training Day.
Everybody I know who's black said that they were done with the Oscars when Denzel did not win for Malcolm X, and that's why I don't even get into the Oscars now. Like everybody I know, that and Angela Bassett for Tina Turner, those two performances. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Denzel did act his behind off as Malcolm X. But yeah, I agree that book, reading that book is like some sort of rite of passage of every young black man. I think everybody has to do it. I did it when I was like 18 or 19. And just about all the young black men I do read it around that age, mm-hmm. or around college age, somewhere around there. And it really is a good book to teach you that you have to take a certain amount of responsibility for your life. That's one thing I always agreed with the Nation of Islam, though I'm not a Muslim. I am a Christian. I always supported the clean lifestyle that they supported. Mm-hmm. I'm somebody who doesn't drink. I don't smoke. Don't do any drugs. That was always my lifestyle. And I remember the Nation of Islam being here in the city of Gary back when we were the murder capital of America. Back in the 90s when I was a kid growing up, the Nation of Islam, they would do security at places like IUN. When there were women in my family going to IUN, and they would be out there, the murder capital of America, the most violent city in the country, the Nation of Islam wasn't scared of anybody.
Right.
They would go up in crack houses. They would take out crack dealers, crack users, and say, y'all can't do this no more here, and not in this community. They would do that without fear.
Yeah.
Without fear. And so, even though, like I said, that's not my path personally, but I can respect that. And a lot of the people who have always been critical of the Nation of Islam always say they're not willing to do that. Okay, they're not willing to do what Malcolm X did when he was helping young black men learn that, drinking and drugging and trying to be a pimp and exploit black women and trying to be this and that and all this stuff to be cool. That ain't the way to go. Okay, they're not willing to do that. They're not willing to. They just say, the Nation of Islam says this about Jews, or they say this about white people, or Malcolm X said this about white people, or whatever. So black people shouldn't have nothing to do with them. And I always said, and I got into an argument with somebody, some political figure on Twitter about this about 6 or 7 months ago. I said, until you guys are willing to do what the nation does and help thousands and thousands of young black men reform themselves, ex-drug dealers, you know, ex-pimps, ex-prostitutes, ex-gangsters, until you're willing to get out there in them streets and do what they were willing to do, then I don't want to hear nothing from you.
Yeah.
And the same thing every year on Malcolm X's birthday, I just think about the sheer volume of black men whose lives were affected by Malcolm X. People who used to drink, drug, pimp, gangbang, and everything else, who read that book, who joined the Nation of Islam, and even if they didn't, even if they were like me, who consider themselves Christians or just regular working class people, you know, who were inspired to live a decent life. Because hey, if Malcolm X could turn himself from Detroit Red, if he could go from being Detroit Red to being an upstanding man, then so can I. We have a caller, Rev. Hello, caller.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, Doc. What's going on, brother?
Yes, you know my name is Cleveland Payne Jr. In From the Promised Land in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes.
But you have to switch things over. I mean, I'm reimagining Gary, so it's Cleveland Payne Jr. in the Promised Land in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King, mind you. Okay. And reimagining Gary. Now here's my take on Malcolm X. When Malcolm X had gorged himself on hate and the whole aspect of it under the guidance of Elijah Muhammad, and he pointed out, see, Malcolm X had a fierce hate for being bamboozled. And the thing is, why most people don't make the connection, they found out the guy that founded the Nation of Islam,
Fard.
Yeah. He had did a major bamboozle, and Malcolm X had went and found out that the white man wasn't a blue-eyed devil, and not only that he wasn't going to gorge himself on hate. He saw more or less how Dr. Martin Luther King could bring it together, and he had decided with this. This is why most young can't deal with Malcolm X, because most people still try to get themselves to look at Malcolm X when he had gorged himself on hate and being bamboozled by Elijah Muhammad. But when he uncovered Elijah Muhammad, you saw that smile on Malcolm X's face. That was a goodbye smile when he said, "Oh, I'm just a dead man." Why? Because he knew that was the end of him. He got killed by all means necessary and by any means necessary. The same hate propaganda that Elijah Muhammad had just allowed him free play on. When he came with the truth and found out, Elijah Muhammad had bamboozled him, and the hate that he had, it had to start dissipating, because it was a total lie. The white man wasn't the blue-eyed devil. The old man had told a major lie. Then Farrakhan came out and said, he's asking for it. He deserved it. And, and that's why his daughter had this conversation with old Farrakhan, and he had to admit, she was trying to say the FBI. She said, no, it wasn't the FBI. Might have was looking at what was going on, but it was you that said this, and you said that. That was no white man that said that. There's a black and a brown. So this is the mixed feeling, and this is why you can't get the following that most people want, because they have to dig back to the hate that Malcolm X had gorged himself on while being bamboozled by Elijah Muhammad, and he found out, and it was a beautiful thing. And his legacy is just isn't what you want to be. These are the bamboozlers here. I found them out, and he said, just as much as I put my life into telling you how the white man struggled, the black man struggled with the white man, he say, I hate this even worse, because this man is doing this to his own people. The thing that you hear me saying, it's easy to think this way if you just want to face the fact. But if you don't, you just run from the fact. So, and I'm going to end it right here.
All right,
that's why the young people can't go with Malcolm X, because he turned from the hate when he found out what a real Muslim was.
All right, thank you,
You
Doc.
know-
That is true to an extent, and a lot of people don't remember that. But yeah, Malcolm X's daughter actually was arrested for trying to kill Farrakhan.
Yeah. One of the things I just was thinking about, recently I had taken a class and I did some research into Dr. King's background.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King was a brilliant child.
Yeah, he
You
was.
know.
He graduated from at 15. If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken.
And he was also, sort of like a child who was his parents viewed him as special. Now, if you take that and compare that with, Malcolm Little,
Mm-hmm.
he grew up in the streets.
Yeah.
He grew up having to hustle. So you got two different backgrounds coming up. You got a young man whose parents had every expectation he's going to go to college. He's going to do something, upper. I mean, they were, basically upper class blacks. I think that, that they would have been part of what they call the boule down south. Malcolm Little in Detroit, like I said, he was a street guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the main lesson he got out of life was that, there aren't friends, there are only interests.
Right.
You can't trust anybody.
Right. Yeah, and it's important to talk about that, how he ended up in the streets. His father was allegedly lynched for being essentially what Malcolm X was, a preacher against racism. And his mother ended up in a mental institution because she was driven mad. They were tormented by white supremacists the whole time he's growing up. And his mother ended up in a mental institution and his father was assassinated.
Yeah. Now, that's not Martin Luther King's story.
Right.
Relatively speaking, he grew up, yes, it was down south. Yes, racism was not subtle, not hidden, none of that. But it was, as they used to have a saying, everybody knew their place.
Right.
And as long as you was in your place, they weren't going to bother you too much. If you were a black male,
hold on, caller,
who wanted to develop some sort of leadership potential, well, generally speaking, you would either become a school teacher or a preacher. He became a preacher.
Right. Caller, you're going to have to wait till after the commercial break. We got to go to a break. Please hold on. We'll be right back here on WOTH 1370 AM right after this.